60 Minutes, Rewind.
There are few men alive today with the underworld credentials of John Martorano, and even fewer who are out of prison and walking the streets. For more than a decade, Martorano was the chief executioner for Boston's Winter Hill Gang, a loose confederation of Irish and Italian-American gangsters run by James Whitey Bulger. Martorano, a former Catholic altar boy and high school football star, became a cool and calculating killer. But he's perhaps best known as the government witness who helped expose a web of corruption and collusion involving the mob and the Boston office of the FBI. For years, he was one of the most feared men in Boston, and this is why.
Did you keep count of how many people you killed?
Never. Until in the end, I never realized it was that many.
How many?
A lot. Too many.
Do you have a number?
I confessed to 20 in court.
Sure you remembered them all?
I hope so.
Martorano had to remember them all. It was part of a deal he cut with the federal government that put him back on the streets of Boston after only 12 years in prison, a little more than 7 months served for each of the 20 people he killed, many of them fellow gangsters, and many of them at close range after looking into their eyes.
Did you always kill people by shooting them?
I think I stabbed one guy.
But you like guns?
Well, it's the easiest way, I think.
Did you get any satisfaction out of the fact that people were afraid of you?
No. But everybody likes to be respected for one thing or another.
His manner is unemotional and detached, and he speaks with the brevity of a professional witness, which he has become. His testimony helped wipe out one of the largest criminal enterprises in New England, for which he served as chief executioner. But Martorano is no psychopath, and he doesn't much like the word hitman.
The hitman is, that sounds to me like somebody's getting a paid contract. I mean, you could never pay me to kill anybody.
A lot of people would say you're a serial killer.
I might be a vigilante, but not a serial killer. Serial killers, you have to stop them, they'll never stop. And they enjoy it. I never enjoyed it. I don't enjoy risking my life, but if the cause was right, I would.
So you felt like you were doing the right thing?
I always felt like I was doing the right thing. Even if it was wrong, I always tried to do the right thing.
If you believe John Martorano, and the Justice Department does, he killed out of a sense of loyalty and duty. He sees himself as a stand-up guy, a man of his word, which is why he decided to talk to us. It goes back 50 years when Martorano was a star running back on the Mount St. Charles Academy football team in Rhode Island. One of his blockers was our late colleague, 60 Minutes correspondent Ed Bradley.
That's you?
Yeah, that's me. That's it. That's me.
And that's Ed?
That's Ed. That's Big Ed. That's what I call him, Big Ed.
He promised Bradley he would sit down with him and tell his story, but Ed died unexpectedly before Martorano got out of prison.
I never thought I'd be sitting here with you. I thought I'd be here with Ed, but I'm sitting here because Ed wanted to sit here with me, and I'm honoring that.
I know one of the questions that Ed wanted to ask you, and it's sort of the way that Ed asked those questions. He wanted, I think he wanted to be sitting here and say, "What happened, Johnny?" Why was it, you think, that you went in different directions?
Well, I think it was mainly the influence of my father and his principles and his values that he pushed on to me.
His father owned an after-hours club called Luigi's in a rough Boston neighborhood known as the Combat Zone. It was a hangout for hoodlums who would become Martorano's role models, and many of them shared his father's simple Sicilian values.
He was the oldest son, and he taught me, you're the oldest son, and this is your heritage. You got to take care of your family and be a man. I don't care what else you are, you got to be a man.
It was a code he lived by and killed for. The first time, it was an ex-con named Robert Palladino, who he thought was going to implicate his brother Jimmy in a murder. Palladino was found under an expressway with a bullet in his head.
You didn't see anything wrong with it?
No. I saved my brother's life. Somebody got hurt. That had to be.
It felt like a duty.
An obligation.
Was the next time easier?
Well, it's sort of like a lawyer trying his first case. It's difficult, but the next case is easier. Then it gets easier, I guess, as you go, because it's, doing this is harder than that.
Why?
because it's hard for me to do. I never did it before.
By the 1970s, his circle of friends and family had expanded to include the Winter Hill Gang, led by the notorious Irish mob boss James Whitey Bulger and Stevie the Rifleman Flemmi. Martorano was their partner in a business that included gambling, loan sharking, extortion, and murder. Martorano's specialty was conflict resolution.
We had a lot of problems with people, and you just kill them before they kill you. Just kill or get killed at times.
I mean, on one occasion, you walked into a crowded bar and shot somebody in broad daylight.
Correct.
With the policeman across the street.
Correct.
That's pretty confident.
Well, I felt confident. You put a disguise on, and you just to get to feel invisible.
Do you remember what the disguise was?
Yeah, had a yellow hard hat, a white meat cutter's coat, full length, and a beard and mustache and sunglasses.
What'd you do afterwards?
I went home and changed, back to work.
They operated out of this old body shop, long since abandoned, but Whitey Bulger's chair is still there.
These are the rooms you don't want to go in.
And so is his old office.
I think that's the trap door for the cellar. Used to leave that open all the time, just intimidate people, try to get the truth out of them.
Oh, yeah?
People would look down there and just wonder.
Anybody go down there and never come up?
I think so, yeah.
That's a nice little touch.
By 1978, Martorano had already killed 18 people. And facing an indictment for fixing horse races, he fled to Florida, where he was living a quiet life under the name Richard O'Coin. He was only there a few years when Bulger and Flemmi called, asking him to carry out a murder that made headlines across the country: the assassination of a wealthy corporate executive in the parking lot of the exclusive Southern Hills Country Club in Tulsa. The victim was Roger Wheeler, the CEO of Telex Corporation and owner of World Highlight, a profitable sports betting business that Bulger was trying to muscle in on. Martorano says the logistical information to carry out the hit was provided by a former Boston FBI agent named Paul Rico.
How did you manage to get into the Southern Hills Country Club to kill Mr. Wheeler?
There was no gates. We could drive in. Waited for him to finish playing golf. I had an update when he was going to his tee time.
You knew what he looked like?
I had his description from Rico.
How many times did you shoot him?
Once.
Did you shoot him between the eyes?
Yeah, around there.
Martorano says it wasn't the first or the last time he would get useful information from an FBI man. One of its top organized crime investigators in Boston, a corrupt agent named John Conley, helped them out for years. Martorano says it was Conley who told them that an associate of theirs named John Callahan was about to rat them out on the Wheeler murder. Callahan would become Martorano's 20th and final victim.
Do you think that John Conley knew that you were going to kill Callahan?
Sure. He said it. He said, we're all going to go to jail the rest of our life if this guy doesn't get killed.
And this is an FBI agent telling you this?
This is an FBI agent telling it to Whitey, telling me.
Martorano has already told this story under oath and is expected to tell it again to a jury in Florida in September when Conley goes on trial for complicity in that murder. The former FBI agent is already serving a 10-year sentence for obstructing justice. In the end, it was a Massachusetts State Police investigation that began to unravel the Winter Hill Gang. In 1995, Martorano, Flemmi, and Whitey Bulger were all indicted for racketeering. Bulger, who was tipped off by Conley about his impending arrest, went underground and is still a fugitive. And in a Boston courtroom, Martorano was about to learn something that would change his life forever.
Oh, worst day of my life.
He knew that Bulger and Flemmi had been getting information from the FBI, but he didn't know they had also been providing it. For decades, his partners were top-level FBI informants, snitching on the Italian mafia and on Martorano and other gang members. They had violated his code of loyalty, especially Whitey Bulger.
I'll go along with a lot of things, but no Judas, no informant. I never informed or ratted on nobody. And if I could have killed him, I'd have killed him, but he wasn't there. And that's what I think he deserves.
Martorano decided to strike back the only way he could, using words as his weapon.
I gave him back what he gave everybody else.
You became an informer.
No, I became a government witness, not an informant or a rat. I became a government witness.
What's the difference?
One's got the courage to stand on the stand, the other one's doing it behind your back and dropping dimes. And how can I be ratting on a guy who's the rat for 30 years? I'm trying to stop him from ratting anymore.
Bulger, who is still on the FBI's most wanted list, is now facing 19 murder charges as a result largely of Martorano's testimony, and Flemmi is in prison for life. Martorano's cooperation helped solve nearly 40 murders, including the 20 he confessed to, and it helped uncover secret mob graves, all in return for a sentence of just 14 years.
In some ways, you got away with murder.
In some ways, he did get away with murder.
Donald Stern was the U.S. attorney who eventually signed off on the agreement.
The only thing worse than this deal was not doing this deal. Because if we didn't do this deal, no one would receive any punishment for these murders. Corrupt law enforcement arrangements would not have been uncovered and prosecuted. And the cancer in law enforcement that existed in Boston for a number of years would have remained there.
So you're saying it changed the landscape of organized crime in Boston?
It did.
The story will continue after this.
Family and friends. Family and friends.
When Martorano was released from prison last year, he decided to return to Boston. He says he feels safe there now. Most of his enemies are dead, in prison, or on the lam.
In some cases, regret can take over a person's life. I don't get the sense that that's the case with you.
Well, maybe that's just not my temperament or my personality. Maybe it is, but you can't see it. Or maybe I can't express it the way you want it, but I have my regrets.
You seem cold. I mean, you killed 20 people, and that's all you can say about it?
I wish it wasn't that way. I mean, I wish there was none. You know, it can't change the past. I'm trying to do the best I can with the future and explain it as best I can. Mm-hmm. I regret it all. I can't change it.
You still a Catholic?
Sure.
I mean, you burn in hell for killing one person.
I don't believe that.
You don't believe that?
No. At one point, maybe a couple years ago, I sent for a priest and gave him a confession. It was maybe 30 years since my last confession, but I went through the whole scenario with him and went through my whole life with him and confessed. And at the end of it, he says, well, what do you think I should give you for penance? I says, Father, you can justifiably crucify me. He laughed and says, nope, 10 Hail Marys, 10 Our Fathers, and don't do it again. So I'll listen to him.
Anything that could get you to kill again?
Not that I can think of.
Not even Whitey Bulger?
Well, there's a bounty on him.